All right, so for those who don't know me, I'm Fernando Magnoli. I am a academic coordinator for Richmond based in São Paulo State. And I'm here tonight to talk to you guys about storytelling, okay? Uh, and the best way to talk about storytelling is by actually sharing something that is personal. So, before we get into that, I would like to give you the agenda for tonight. So, these are the things that we're going to be covering tonight. Okay, so the first one is to understand the process of good storytelling. Then, we're going to talk about providing methods and activities that pique interest for students. Then, we move to improving students' comprehension. And finally, on promoting interference. Okay. Many of the activities that we're going to be done today were not designed for a specific age group, but mostly we work with storytelling with younger children and children. But it will be seen that there are lots of activities that I'm going to show you that can be used basically with any age group, and I believe it can be very useful for your classes. Okay. So, good evening again. Thanks for being here. We have 28 people attending the seminar as of now. More people will be coming at some time later on, and they are welcome to join us anytime. Okay. All right. So, storytelling. I think I should start talking about storytelling with my first experience with storytelling. Ever since I was a little kid, I was fascinated by books. The touch of the pages, the feel of the book in my hands, and the ability to handle it made me very curious. And although I did not yet read, I was able to tell by pictures that there was a sequence that made sense, and then a story could be told. And ever since then, I have been working with storytelling with my classes at any age group because it's very effective in my opinion. Okay. Now, as spectators, do you guys enjoy listening to stories? Can you write on the chat there? Cool. Great. And from the stories that you've been told, uh, there were probably lots of favorite stories we all share. Okay. And I believe stories are meant to be told. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story. Okay. I want you to pay attention to the way I tell it. I want you to pay attention to my body language, and I want you to pay attention to the story itself because I'm going to be making some questions at the end of it. Okay? All right. Oopsie. There. Okay. So I'm going to start to tell my story, and one can only tell his story when he shows evidence of it. So this is the story of Fernando. I'm an academic coordinator for Richmond. I'm married to Erica, and I have two kids. They're called Luigi and Lara. They were named this way because of my passion for video games. Luigi as in Mario's brother, and Lara as in Lara Croft. Okay. Cooking is my passion, and I love to cook. I love to try new recipes. I love to create things in the kitchen, and I always like to try. Despite the ingredients that I have at home, I try to become a kitchen wizard and mix stuff in order to create something that ends up tasting good. My favorite kind of music is rock and roll, and Guns N' Roses is my favorite band. My favorite sport is soccer, and Corinthians is my favorite soccer team. I am a very organized person. Everything in my room is labeled, clearly organized in their respective drawers, in their respective shelves, and things like that. My favorite drink is coffee, and I drink a lot of coffee. I start my morning with a very large glass of coffee, and I think I if I start my day without coffee, the day does not start. Sometimes I have to go back home or stop what I'm doing because after an hour the day is in, an hour after the day is in, I start having headaches because I haven't had coffee yet. So that's how addicted I am to coffee. I love watching Netflix, and currently my favorite sitcom is called How to Get Away with Murder. I don't know if you guys have heard about it, and it's about a professor in law school, and she helps people get away from the law. It's really interesting. Then I have two pictures of Mario Brothers. They are my favorite video game characters because I love playing games. Then I have a picture of a tablet because I love technology. I use technology in my teaching. I use technology in work. I use technology in my personal life all the time. Then I have a picture of the beach because the beach is my favorite spot to unwind. It's my favorite place to go. And finally, I have to talk about Claudia Leite, who is indeed my favorite singer. Okay? So that's the story of Fernando. I know some of you already know me, some of you don't, but some of you have gotten to know a little bit about myself, and I want to do the same with you guys. I want to do the same activity. Okay? So, storytelling is very important because it helps people really pick interest and pay attention and really travel or go on a journey with you guys. Okay, but storytelling to be effective, you have to first understand this. Sorry, there was a connection problem. It's very windy outside where I live. I live in Ipiranga, São Paulo, and it's really windy outside, and connection may be, intermittent at times. So I'm really sorry. I really apologize for that. Okay. So going back to what I was saying. Um, so storytelling to be very effective, you have to trust the story. You have to believe in what you're saying. You have to show passion. You have to put your emotion into it. And as I was just telling you my story, I know that some of the things that I have mentioned might have been shocking, might have been surprising. Some of them might be same shared interests with you guys. But above all, I have to really admit that some of the things I said were not true. Okay? And I think developing a technique in which you become believable is rule number one to storytelling. Okay, we have to try to look, sound, and be believable towards those listening to us. Okay, so I'm going back to the previous slide with the images of my story. Okay, and I'm going to say the sentences again, and in the chat, I want you to type down whether you think the information I'm saying is true or false. Okay, I believe there's 5 or 6 pieces of incorrect information. Okay, so let me go back. So the first slide is me and my wife and 2 kids, Luigi and Lara. And I said that they were named after video game characters. Is it true or false? Angela. Angela says it's false. You know what, Angela? That's absolutely correct. My kids are named Luigi and Lara, but the relationship with video game characters is untrue, okay? It's not true at all. It's just that we like the names. Okay. All right. Then, my passion for cooking. I love to cook and I love to try new recipes and, create magic with things. Is it true or false? It is absolutely true. And as a matter of fact, that picture there is one of my creations. So I really love to cook. Okay, next one. Rock being my favorite kind of music and Guns N' Roses being my favorite band. Is it true or false? Okay, it is absolutely false. I don't like Guns N' Roses whatsoever, and I do like rock. I'll give you that, but I don't like Guns N' Roses. Okay. Next one. Corinthians being my favorite soccer team. True or false? Soraya says no way. Renata says false, please. And Natalie says I hope not. Well, I will not disappoint you guys. I'm in the green side of the force, so I am a Palmeiras supporter, and I can't stand Corinthians. Okay. All right. Next one is about my being organized person. You guys think it's true or false? All right. Well, I am in my son's room. I don't know if you guys can see it, but everything is neat and clean and organized. But that's because of my wife. All right. I'm very, very disorganized. Very disorganized. And next one is about coffee. I said that I drink lots all day long and that I cannot start a day without coffee. And you guys said, some of you are saying, all teachers do. True. Okay. That's true, Sonia. There is a great woman, absolutely. And yes, coffee is my addiction. I have lots of cups of coffee a day, around 8, 10 cups of coffee, depending on the day. All right. My love for series, How to Get Away with Murder, and Netflix in general, true or false? Some of you are saying it true. Most of you are saying it's true, and it is absolutely true. And I just don't have the time to watch as much as I desired because, again, we have to prepare classes, prepare workshops, be on the road with teachers and stuff. So that's absolutely false. I mean, true. Now, I talked about video games, obviously, so that's true. So if I talked about video games, my love about technology is also true, right? Now, the two very last ones, my favorite place being the beach and Claudia Leite being my favorite singer. Is it true or false? So, beach true, true and false, beach true, Claudia Leite false, both false. Yes, Fernanda, both are false. Okay. I actually prefer the mountains and I love being in cold weather. Okay, so both things are false. Now, thanks for participating. I just wanted to do this activity because storytelling also to be effective. Sometimes, especially when we want to contextualize things in a classroom, we should try to bring our personal experience and our personal likes and dislikes and things like that to help students understand context and also to help students relate to what you're telling them. All right, it is important to share. Sharing is a very important part of the process. Because if we want our students to produce, if we want our students to open up, and if we want our students to be participating, but to be participative of the activities, we need to give them something to work on. It's like the law of give and take. I'll give you some, you give me some. I'll tell you a little bit about myself, you tell me a little bit about yourself. I need to open up a little bit, okay? And despite the fact that students say that stories are for children, stories are for kids, I actually think stories are ageless. They are appropriate for anyone at any age. And that's because we listen to stories every day. We listen to stories every day and all the time. Okay, we just don't notice it. When you're on your WhatsApp and are talking to your friends, you're listening to a story. When your mother calls you to check if you have taken your umbrella when you left home, she's asking you about your day and you're telling her the story. When your kids get home from school and tell whatever happened during their day at school, they're telling you a story. The news is just a show for storytelling. Blogs are shows for storytelling. Instagram is a visual storytelling device. Everything we say, everything we do, everything surrounding us tells us a story. Okay? If I just look around here, I can tell you a story just by getting objects. So, for example, this here, I am in the office / my kids' room. This is a set of crayons. They are made of wood. There's a crayon there. I don't know if you guys can see it. But just by getting these objects, I can tell you the story of when I got them. I went to Embu das Artes, I guess, and that's where I bought those things. And I can tell you the story about this picture. This is my son when he was 11 months old. No, sorry, when he was 1 month old. And this is his newborn photo shoot. So if you just look around, you will see that we are surrounded by stories. And that's why we have to tell stories. Because stories help us contextualize things. Stories help us relate to things. And stories become memorable. Okay? Now, do you guys remember, of course you remember going to school. Do you remember any books in specific that your Portuguese teacher or your language teacher asked you to read that you still remember to this day? A Ilha Perdida. All right. I have read that one too. I do remember that one. O Grande Mentecapto, Capitães de Areia, The Ones Assigned for Vestibular, Treasure Island Once, Dom Casmurro. Yes, I have read that one as well. Escaravelho do Diabo, I have read that one as well. I remember reading one called A Marca de uma Lágrima. I don't know, guys, if you guys remember that. And I remember reading another one, because not because of Vestibular, but it was a book by José de Alencar called A Pata da Gazela. How many of you have read that book? Okay, Juliana says me. Soraya as well, Angela as well. Natalia has never heard of it. All right. Well, people say this is a classical book from Brazilian literature by José de Alencar. And I remember that book clearly, and I remember I was 13 years old when I read that book. And for those who have read that book and who can relate to it, it's like asking a 10-year-old to read Dom Casmurro is asking a 13-year-old to read A Pata da Gazela. It's not age appropriate. The language was too hard. The topic was not involving, was not interesting, at least for me at that age time, at that time. But most of all, it was hard for me because it was just not interesting. And as a 13-year-old boy, there was a part of the book in which I had to read about a shoe being described for 6 pages. Okay? And that's really hard for a kid who is 13 years old, whose interests are completely different. Okay? And worse is I had to do this with the whole classroom, back then when education was a bit more traditional and the teacher assigned a book for the whole class to read. And then we would have to do a test or perform a seminar or something like that, present a seminar or something like that. It was hard. First, because we didn't get the book itself. The language was too hard. The topic was inappropriate for our age group, and believe me, it was hard to follow up because we just didn't want to follow up. Okay, kids at my age at that time, they wanted to read Vagalume books, as you guys are mentioning there. We wanted to read O Mistério dos Cinco Estrelas. We wanted to read A Marca de uma Lágrima. We wanted to read A Droga da Obediência. We wanted to read Pedro Bandeira in general, Marcus Rey, things that were actually fun and hip and cool. And at that time, it was tough. First, because there was no preparation for the book itself. Then, because there was lots of difficult vocabulary. And finally, because the topic was not interesting enough for me. But worst of all is that after finishing a book, after having read something, after having watched something, we want to talk about it. Okay? And this is the first rule for storytelling. Storytelling is an interpersonal experience. It demands interaction. It demands participation. It demands people being part of it, not only passively as they are listening to it, but also actively, because after you're done, you want to comment about it, you want to talk about it, you want to share your experiences about it. Okay? It's just like when you leave the theater, the movie theater, and you're eager to talk to your best friend and tell him or her about your favorite movie or about the movie you've just seen. Okay? So storytelling is an interpersonal experience. Okay? The first aim is to promote engagement in between people. Okay? And in a world like nowadays, where the stories that we hear most of the time have a negative aspect, we have to start sharing some positivity via storytelling. Okay? But it's not easy. Storytelling is not easy. It's not easy at all. And obviously there are techniques, and we have to get prepared, and we have to know our audience, and we have to know about the topic. But we can learn how to tell stories. It is a process, okay? Because again, remember, we are telling stories all the time, okay? And despite the fact that sometimes they may not be true, we tell the stories all the time, okay? I'll give you an example. Just this morning, one of my kids went to school. I took him to school, actually. Luigi and Lara. So I had a visit this morning with a co-worker of mine, and it was my car rotation day. It was my rodízio day today. So she picked me up, and she arrived really early. She arrived at the time I was, getting the kids in the car to take them to school. And since we were going to visit a school at the same area where my kids were, I just, put the kids in her car and drove to school. And they arrived at school, and the teacher calls and we're like, "Hey, Luigi, Lara, you guys look so excited. What happened? What was different today?" And then my kid says, "Teacher, today my dad brought me to school in an Uber, okay? And it was not an Uber, and it was my coworker's car." But again, the story was not true itself by the facts that were told, but his interpretation which was, unique, and, his own interpretation was very interesting, because in my son's mind, whenever we drive a car that is not the car we usually drive, it means we are in a cab or in an Uber. And his association was almost immediate. Okay. And it's funny when we tell a story, because the very first story that I told you guys about my life, which was this one, can be retold by all of you to other people. And maybe it will not have the same words or the same message, but it will stress probably your favorite parts, the things that you thought they were the most interesting, and the things that mostly caught your attention. And that's why storytelling is effective, because it is a very individual experience. We choose to like whatever best matches our personality. Your best recollections of a story, your best memories of a story, probably deal with the values that you have, the things that you like, your favorite stuff, and that's why it becomes memorable. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why storytelling is important. But again, it's not easy. First of all, we have to think about how stories are told. Okay, and normally stories are told with once upon a time, or stories are told in a very linear way. Sometimes people dislike linear stories. They would rather have stories that, are all going up and back and forth, up and down, and things like that. But for me, a good story, when it's told, it has to catch the listener's attention in the very first 5 minutes. Think about your favorite movies. Think about the movies that you've seen, or think about the books that you have read. What made the stories want you to want more from them? What did the movies or the things get from you? Maraide, I guess, right? Maraide Marca Modesto is saying it's a hook. So there must be hooks in the story. Yes, it's true. But what caught your attention? What happened? Was it the topic? Was it the way it was told? Was it the vocabulary itself? Was it because you liked the author? The elements of surprise, as Marcel is saying? The plot itself? The tension? Yes. Relatability? Yes. We usually want to hear more from things we can relate to. That's absolutely right. The way it is told. And that's all these things you guys are saying are absolutely true. Someone mentioned the hook, and it is important to talk about the hook. Okay, Brazilians in general are great storytellers because, okay, Mara, good. Brazilians in general are great storytellers because we are in the culture of soap operas. We are in the culture of telenovelas. Okay, and the people who write stories and the people who create the telenovela chapters, they know exactly when to stop in order to catch your attention and, keep you anxious for the remainder of the story. Okay, there are lots of movies that do the same, that captures your attention in the very beginning, and then they, keep rising your expectation to whatever is going to happen before the, big moment happens. Okay, and I think that's really, really important to do that. But not only that, not only should we have hooks, but we also should get people engaging with the topic. Okay, it is important that the students engage, or that the listeners engage. Okay, because again, if we want to believe that storytelling is a powerful tool to help students understand context, to help students understand meaning and gain meaning from the things they're learning. Uh, in other ways, we want the students to engage with whatever they're learning. Look at the slide there. Engaging means establishing a meaningful contact or a connection with. Okay? Creating meaning is the basis of storytelling. But if students cannot engage with the story because they don't understand the story, or because maybe the story is too hard, the vocabulary is too advanced, it is tough for us to engage, to get them engaged. But there are lots of techniques that we're going to see later on that will help students engage. I agree with you, Marcelo. Sometimes the students can be bored, and they, especially teenagers, who say they don't like anything, whatever we do is boring, whatever we do is ineffective. But in a way, a story is effective when it touches a student in a very specific and individual way. And we're going to be talking about that as well a little bit later on. Okay. All right. So we have to believe that storytelling, because we talk about active participation, we have to understand that a story is an imaginative journey, okay? And it requires our participation. Before I explore a little bit more about this storytelling activity, I want to do a experiment with all of you, okay? I'm going to tell you a very simple paragraph of a story, and I want you in your chats to write down the answer to the final question I'm going to make, okay? One word answer, just type it there, all right? Okay. So, I was driving from Alphaville to São Paulo this morning, and I was faced with chaotic traffic as I merged into Marginal dos Pinheiros. I was driving through Marginal dos Pinheiros, and for those who are not from São Paulo, it's one of the main roads here. And in Marginal dos Pinheiros, now there is near USP, there is a glass wall. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but there is a wall made of glass that people have been breaking quite often in the past weeks. Anyway, I was just driving by there to go to lunch. And then just as I approached Avenida Rebouças, I merged onto Avenida Rebouças, and past Shopping Eldorado, there was this flower shop on the corner. And it's funny because when you're driving, you really can't pay attention to things around you. But at that specific moment, the lights were red, and I could stop and look around. And I saw this flower shop, and there was this beautiful flower on display. What color was the flower? Lots of different colors. Red, blue, no clue, yellow, gray, pink. You didn't say it actually. No, I didn't. Okay. But I wanted to show you that this is the story of this is the process of good storytelling. You engage students, and as you tell them facts from the story, they have to make mental images of whatever is being said and create a meaningful image in the back of their minds. And that's why I think storytelling is really, really, really important. And it's really an imaginative journey. Because when you're being told a story, you have to imagine what you're listening. And when I say things like a car, and then I saw the sky, and then I saw a flower, probably you will associate the new words from the story or the words from the story with your favorite things or things that were relevant to you, okay? The first time someone told me this story, I actually said that the flower was yellow, and I remembered later on, I was thinking, why did I say the flower was yellow when nobody mentioned the color of the flower? And then I remembered that the day I got married, my wife's bouquet of flowers were yellow flowers. And then usually when you start creating these mental images when you listen to a story, you probably activate personal vocabulary and personal likes and dislikes about the things that you said. Okay. Uh, and I think it's really cool because, especially when you describe a person, and that's an exercise I like to do with the students. I like to tell them the story, about anything, a story from their course book. I just read out loud, and I ask them to draw the characters. We all have different points of view. Somebody is going to draw the male character or the female character, either taller or shorter or skinnier or fatter with blue or green eyes. Despite the fact that you mentioned the descriptions or not, we will create images in our minds. Okay? It's like, for example, I say a word and you guys write down whatever comes to your mind. Okay? For example, chocolate. What comes to your mind when I say chocolate? So sweet, brown, a bar, fat, delicious. I say Kit Kat or Twix. Okay? Dark chocolate. Okay? So we all have different references from words based on our personal journey. Okay? And that's a very simple exercise that I like to do. Now, also, another thing that we can do is to think about vocabulary itself. Okay? Just a minute. I'm sorry. Another thing that we can do is like this. So I want you guys to think about the pirate in the picture. Okay, I'm going to tell you a story, all right, about pirates. Okay, now I want you, this is like what I like to do with my students. Okay, so whenever I tell them I'm going to tell them a story about a specific topic, okay, I like to tell them to do an activity, a pre-activity about the topic of the story. And this is how I do it. I ask them to get a piece of paper. I ask them to get the piece of paper and fold it 3 times. Okay, like this, and then like this, and then like this. Okay. And despite the order that you fold, physics and geometry works brilliantly because the result is always going to be something this size. Okay. Then I ask the students to get the piece of paper that they folded 3 times, and I ask them to unfold it to the original size, and then they will have a bingo card with 8 spots. Okay. So then I tell my students to, in this piece of paper, write down 8 words they will find in the story I'm about to tell them. So I tell them the topic. So we're going to read about pirates. We're going to read about food. We're going to read about sports. We're going to read about whatever. And then I ask them to write down the words. Okay? Can you guys help me out? I'm gonna give you 1 minute. Okay? And I want you guys, after 1 minute, to start typing in the chat box the words that you will find in the pirate story that I'm about to tell you. Okay? I'm writing down my words as well. Exactly, Mara. This is one of the ideas. Okay, so find out whatever they already know about the topic, and then also see whatever we should work in order to help them understand the story better. Okay, so guys, it's enough time. I want you now to type a few of the words that you have come up with, and I will try to keep score here. Okay, so pirates, words about pirate stories that we can find in the story I'm about to tell. Okay, go. So blood, treasure, fight, loving couple, jewelry, box, map, cross, ship, hook, parrot, treasure, fights, flag, sea, death. Rum. Somebody likes to drink. Robbery, sword. Great. All great words, guys. I think we're on the same page. But let me show you what I like to do, okay? So, these are my words. I don't know if you can see it. But the first one says pirate, because obviously if you're going to read a story without the word pirate, it's not a pirate story after all, right? So what you're going to do is, you're going to ask each student to read a word from their list, and if the students have the same words, they will cross it out. So for example, there is one there that Glacy wrote that says ocean. And ocean was one of my words, so I will cross out from my activity, okay? But then the first student to get all the words crossed out wins, okay? Now look, I'm going to say the words that I had. It's probably most of the ones that you had. Look, I had pirate, I had ship, I had ocean, and then I had gold. Now, I'm going to stop right there. When you have something that can really relate to more synonyms, so for example, gold, treasure, treasure chest, jewelry, diamonds, coins, and things like that, you will allow synonyms to be also crossed out, okay? Just to make the game more fun and to actually help students understand about synonyms, okay? But look at that. And then I had sword, so for example, sword and maybe cannon and gun and revolver and pistol or whatever. And I had parrots because all pirates carry parrots and stuff like that, okay? Now, that's a great thing. And what I really love about this exercise is that every teacher I do this exercise with, they act exactly as their students do, okay? If I look back on the chat, the words that you guys have mentioned are great, are fight. So fight is a noun or a verb. But look, sword is a noun, treasure is a noun, ocean is a noun, shark is a noun, sea is a noun, treasure is a noun, map, ship, hook, parrot, flag, and platform, all nouns. And then if I keep scrolling up, 95% of the words you guys have mentioned are nouns. And that's exactly what gets the students to dislike storytelling and reading, is because when they think about words they probably will find in the story, they just think about the nouns itself. And a story can only be told when a noun does something, so a verb. When a noun is something, is an adjective. Because again, remember the flower exercise. I didn't tell you the flower was a specific color and you guys had to imagine it. For the story to be accurate and you know, really interesting for the students, they have to imagine whatever they're listening to with mental images. So I gotta teach students adjectives in order to understand the details of the words in the story and to actually see the story with more detail and with more depth. Okay, and finally, we have to teach them about adverbs because, for example, we're going to talk about a pirate. So the pirate is walking down the beach. So probably from the list that you guys have mentioned, pirate would be there, beach would be there, but walk down would not. Okay, or the pirate is walking down the beach fast. Fast is an adverb. It's not there as well. Okay, so that's something that I like to do with the students. After I do this first exercise and they come up with all the nouns and you put them on the board and they keep that in their lists that they have written down in the bingo cards, you can divide the class into different groups of students. So one group will write adjectives related to those nouns. Another group will write verbs related to those nouns, and a third group will write adverbs related to those nouns or to those verbs. Okay, the idea is that we're going to create an atmosphere that will get students to think a little bit outside the box. Okay, and actually think about how words connect with one another, and probably elicit most of the words that will appear in the story that they will read later on. So then what happens is when they actually get to read the story will flow smoothly and they will have better understanding, better global understanding of whatever is being told by the story. Okay? And then again, we can even, divide students into different groups and have group one that was, dealing with the verbs reads the first paragraph, and then the group two that was dealing with adverbs reads the second paragraph, and then we can build comprehension together. Okay, that's one of the things that I like to do. Okay, especially when you have a short class. All right, but does anybody have any doubts about the activity that I have just mentioned? Just to make sure we're following. Okay. Okay. I think everybody's right, is all right. Well, uh, let's move on. So also we have to think about length. Okay. So let's suppose I'm telling you a story. So let's go back to the story of the pirates. What if my story was too short? What would happen to students? What do you think their reaction would be? It's funny, I never know what to do with these silent moments in webinars. I don't know if I just, should dance or look at you guys and, tell a joke while you guys write down, because the silence kills me. Especially, I live in a house with two kids. It's silence outside, so I'm also wondering what's going on in there. So there will be lots of stories when I get back. But I don't see any replies yet about what you guys think happens when the story we tell is way too short. Okay? Anybody? I'll just drink more water. For the younger learners, a short story is efficient. No idea how their attention span isn't the longest, especially if they're younger learners. Okay. Some of you agree with it. Okay. Well, it depends on the age group. I think that's the biggest part. And also it depends on the reaction of the story itself. We know that when a story is effective, people want to listen, people will hang in there, and wait until, may have it develop. But I think this is a difficult ground, because in my opinion is, if the story is way too short and the students were enjoying it, they can feel a little bit frustrated because it is too quick and the moment was great. If the story is too long, the students might find it boring because they can't keep up with the pace. So it depends on how you deal with it. Okay. Now, it depends on the age group as well, the techniques that you use, and depends on your goal as well. One of the things that I like to do, especially with kids, is story building. I like to tell them stories, and I like to interfere all the time by asking questions to make sure that they are kept interested. Okay, so for example, I'm gonna look at the list of attendees now, and then I'm gonna make some questions. So for example, I was, going to tell the story about a princess, right? Kenya. I was going to tell the story about a princess. Kenya, what was her name? And then she answers. And then I keep going. And the story about this princess is not a regular story because this princess lives in a Regis, where does she live? I keep asking the students to interfere in the story, okay? Which is a good thing because it will help students participate, and also it will help students focus, especially younger kids. Why is that? First, again, because storytelling is an interpersonal experience. Second, because students want to be heard, they want to be part of the story, they want to give their opinion, and they want their friends to share whatever they're listening. So it's really cool if we have students interfere in the classroom. Now, from the participants in this course, how many of you teach kids from 3 to 10 years old? Just write down me. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Many of you, right? 9, 10. From 6 on. Okay. Now, and you guys know that whenever you tell them a story, it's like this. So guys, I'm going to tell you the story about a friend of mine. His name is Bingo. Bingo is a dog. You say the word dog, the student raises his hands. Teacher, I have a dog. His name is Billy. And then his friend goes, me too. And his name is Jack. And the other one goes, oh, but I have a cat and her name is Princess. And the other goes, oh, I don't have any pets, but my neighbor's brother's cousin's grandfather has a pet and it is an iguana. And they keep going, 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 going. And you know what? We have to allow interference. They will interfere, and it's part of the process. And it is a way for us to check whatever they already know about the topic and to see how cool it is sharing with one another. It is important to allow these interruptions, but it's also good to make sure we can stop them whenever we want them to, because again, the students won't be interested for long, especially when they are either in pre-primary or primary, when they're up to 10 years old. Their attention span is very short, so we have to keep varying the style of telling the story every 5 minutes. Okay, so it's true, right? And Renata says, I have taught kids it's exactly this way. Yes, it's absolutely that way. Anyway, so that's a good thing. Now, another thing we can do, especially with stories, it depends on the goal, okay? So, for example, I can tell a story and then I can ask the students to interfere by saying things that I asked them about the story. Or at the same time as I'm telling the story, I can ask them to draw whatever catches their attention. And then I'm dealing with maybe vocabulary, maybe favorites, or things like that. Another thing we can do with storytelling is this, okay? I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but in YouTube, there is a lot of stories that only use sound effects, and we do the opposite. I mean, the backwards process, okay? So let me share you a little bit of this. Can you guys hear? There's no image, don't worry. You have to just listen, okay? It's a listening activity. I'm going to stop there because, there's a lot of things going on, but you can just, write down, search on YouTube about visual stories or audio stories. They just have the sounds, the sequence of sounds about billions of topics there. And then we can get the students to recreate the story. So in this case, I want the students, to say the words, to use proper vocabulary, to use proper grammar, or to use, that imagination to create a story. This can be an individual process. This can be a group process. It can be done via writing. It can be done via speaking. The students can record a video about the story, recreating the steps of what the story was about. There's lots of ways and lots of things that we can do in the classroom. So that's another idea that I wanted to share with you guys, which is the audio activity. Okay. Another thing is, especially with kids, to work with total physical response. Okay. Total physical response is a method of teaching language using physical movement to react to verbal input in order to reduce students' inhibitions and lower their affective filter, to lower stress. Okay. In other words, it's to use your body to perform or to create language. Okay. So the idea is, this is a game that I like to do. Have you guys heard about the story? Probably you have. The Three Little Piglets, or the Three Little Pigs. Yes, right? So let's suppose every time I'm going to give you some comments. Okay. Oh, that's okay, Carol. Write me later on. Okay, thanks. To keep the students focused. Okay. So, for example, every time you hear the word pig, you're going to stand up. Every time you hear the word blow, as in blow, you're going to clap. Every time you hear the word wolf, you jump. Okay. And the idea is you can create, you can create competitions between this side of the class and that side of the class, and get the students, moving around, just to make sure they keep focused on the story, because again, they will really activate their listening skills. They will put their good ears to use, and then whenever they hear those words, they will use total physical response. There is a number of activities we can do with TPR, and that's one of them. Okay. Now, another one. Remember that we were talking about storytelling in the beginning of the activity, and then guys, take a look at the picture. There is a guy taking a selfie. Okay. Another storytelling activity that I like to do with students is based on daily habits. Okay. You all probably teach about daily habits, so the students have to say at 5 o'clock. At 7 o'clock I get up. At 7:15 I brush my teeth. At 7:30 I have breakfast. And then at 8 o'clock I go to school. I'm in school from 8 to 12. Then at 12 I have lunch. At 2 o'clock I watch TV. At 4 o'clock I do my homework. We all do this. All the course books teach like this. But it's kind of boring to learn to tell your personal story about your daily lives like that. So one activities I've done as a teacher is students will take selfies and share whatever they do during their day, and via selfies. So they just get their phones, and then they get the pictures, and they say, oh, look, at 7 o'clock I brush my teeth. At 9 o'clock I go to school. At 3 o'clock I have a snack with my brother or sister and stuff. It's really useful because, again, students love this little device here. Okay. But what happens is, let's suppose in the same class, you're going to get the students in a pair, and then they have to tell each other about their, days with selfies. And if the students are best friends, they already know exactly what the other one is doing. So then there is no language that is being practiced. The students are not really paying attention because they already know what to expect from his friend. So we can innovate. Okay. So then what you can do is, so guys, you're going to tell the story with your daily activities. So you're going to use the vocabulary You're going to, take 10 pictures of 10 things you did during your day and then share with your friends. But you're going to be different characters. So João, instead of João, you're going to be Brad Pitt. And Maria, you're going to be Queen Elizabeth. And Johnny, you're going to be Santa Claus. And Marjorie, you're going to be, I don't know, you're going to be Neymar. And then they will dress up or whatever, but they will take pictures pretending to do things at those specific times as if they were someone else. And then storytelling is cool because the students don't know what to expect from these people. The students will get creative. The students will have to learn new vocabulary in order to come up with the results for that specific task. And then everybody will learn from an experience that is going to be very fun for them to share with one another. Okay, you guys have no idea the things the students have done with this activity. It's really, really cool. Should do that. Okay. Now, another one is to create follow-up activities. Okay. I love working with reading. I love the way that stories are told, but I don't love what follows up. Okay. Why is that? Because most of the follow-ups for storytelling are usually grammatical. Okay, take a look at a reading exercise. Okay, a reading from your course book. Then the follow-up questions are why, when, what, which, who, how, whose. Now, if a student knows grammar, the students can find those stories by, scanning the text, knowing that when means time, they will look for a time expression and then they will answer that time expression. That doesn't necessarily mean that he understands the text itself or the story itself, but that means that he can understand grammar and syntax. Okay, and that's the same with stories. When students are reading a book, they will scan through the things, but maybe they don't understand the concept of everything itself. The idea for follow-up activities is to avoid these kind of exercises and promote something that's a little bit different. Okay, the first one is mind mapping. Okay, I like mind mapping a lot because it allows me to connect my ideas. Remember how we were doing this activity about the pirates and you guys were eliciting the vocabulary that was going to come up in the story? How about after we do that activity, post the story being told, we go back to the list of the words that the students have come up with and we do something like this. Okay, mind map. So let's talk about a mind map here. So the students will categorize things differently. Okay, so they will put the pirate. Oopsie. I'm trying to draw with my mouse, but I am not very good because I'm using a mouse. I'm not using a pen. But again, you guys understand what I'm trying to do here. So you put the first topic in the center, and then you start creating different topics around it. Okay, so for example, pirates. So what they do, how they do it, physical characteristics. Okay, so 3 different groups. Now let's suppose I'm going to talk about characteristics. So I'm going to divide this into different categories. So physical, and then emotional or mind characteristics. Yes, Marcelo, exactly like a vocabulary network. It's a mind map. Okay, I find it very useful to help students organize the new things that they're learning from the stories and actually to keep revisiting it after the stories are told, just to make sure that the new words or expressions that they have learned is lost. Okay, so that's an activity that I like to do with the students. Okay, mind map. Another one, it's about point of view. Okay, exactly, Marcelo. You start the vocabulary in the right slots depending on the categories that they are. Okay, So for example, let's think about pirates. So I'm going to have a category about physical, and then a category about emotional. So physical, I can do verbs, then I can do adjectives, then I can do adverbs and things like that to help students get organized. Okay, but also we can talk about point of view. Okay, uh, I think point of view is one of the most efficient ways we can get and we can use in the class to make sure that the students have understood the story that we told. Okay, why is that? Because for you to understand the story completely, and by being able to put yourself in a different perspective or the perspective of a different character in that specific story, you have to have understood the story well in order to voice out your opinion about something. For example, how many of you have watched the movie Titanic? I believe all of you, right? I hope. It's a classic. Okay. Now, according to the movie, according to the facts that the movie shows, who was responsible for the sinking of the ship? The iceberg. The watcher, the captain, the creators of the ship. Ooh, discussion. Okay. The rich guy. Which rich guy, Juliana? You mean Rose's husband? You mean Kate Winslet's husband? Oh, Carl, yes. Okay, Leonardo DiCaprio was guilty. Okay. Now, think about that. Um, in my opinion, are you talking about the guy who built the boat, the engineer, Juliana? I'm sorry, guys. Can you guys hear me again? Thanks, I'm back. This one really hurt this time. The connection went down, but now I'm back. Okay, let me just adjust the thing here. Can you guys still hear me now? Bye, Angela. Okay, so I'm almost done. Okay, so I'm talking about point of view. But again, if you think about point of view, we have a story is told in a different way. For example, the story of the Titanic is told by the point of view of Rose, who is the end of the movie is the old lady that drops the heart of the ocean in the ocean. If you could ask the students to tell the story from the point of view of the captain, do you think the story would be different? If you ask the students to tell the story from the point of view of Rose's mother, would the story be different? If you ask the students to tell the story from the point of view of Jack Dawson, which is Leonardo DiCaprio's character, would it be different? So what I'm saying is the stories are different when they are told in different perspectives. And students can only mention their comprehension on the story when the perspectives are different, if they have really understood the story itself. So it's important to show that the students that for every story there is a different side of it. Not only one, two, maybe five, maybe 10 different sides. And in these different sides, despite that the facts are similar, most of the points of view are different. And because of the points of view being different, vocabulary that is practiced is also different. Okay? So I think it's a good practice to think about this. Another thing that I like to do is to talk about Venn diagrams. Okay? Let's suppose we're going to talk about Titanic again. And here on the center, we do the intersection of whatever is common to characters or to movies or to books or to stories. And then on the outsides, we put whatever was different. So for example, I want to compare Jack and Rose. For example, Jack is Leonardo DiCaprio and Rose is Kate Winslet. They're both what, guys? What are they both? They're both good looking. What else? They're both in love. Yeah, they're both passionate. They're both main characters. They're both adventurous. They're both young. Great. Awesome. What about differences between Rose and Jack? So Rose is a woman and Jack is a man. She's rich and he's poor. She's British and he's American. You know, there's lots of different things. And again, I'm not picking on when, which, what, why, who, or how. I'm picking on the student's general comprehension of the thing itself. And what is another thing that is great about an exercise of like this is that there is no right or wrong. The students can, show their points of view. And, again, a point of view is very personal. So there's no right or wrong. And the students don't feel so frustrated as when they have to answer a multiple choice question based on a story in which there is one correct answer only, three incorrect answers, sometimes four, and then they can get very frustrated because in their own understanding, that's how the story looked. Not because of the facts, but because of their relationship with the story. Okay. Another thing that I like to do is to do something very personal. So, for example, let the students pick a character from the story that you have told them. If they could write them a postcard, if they could tell them something, what would they say? What would they write them? For example, I would have told Rose that there was enough room for Jack and her on that board, that Jack didn't have to die because of her. You know what I mean? Or, for example, think about the story of Dom Casmurro and think about Bentinho, who is the main male character. If I could write him, I would tell him, you know what, Bentinho? I don't think she cheated on you. I think you are very anal about stuff, and I think you need therapy. You know what I mean? It's an opportunity for students to actually show their relationship with the story by doing something that, again, there is no right or wrong. You ask them to write a postcard about it. Okay, and finally, every story comes up with with a problem, and we can ask the students to come up with a product or with something that is innovative or something that is creative as a solution to the problem. Okay, so lots of people died in the Titanic. If you could have created anything to prevent that from happening, what would you have done? If you could create a product that had saved more people, what would you have done? That's the activity called Solution Inc. Every story there is a problem or there's something that should be overcome, and we have to promote this. It helps critical thinking, it helps with language development, it helps students with positioning their ideas about the topic. Anyway, there's lots of possibilities. Okay, so guys, we're reaching the end of the presentation. I have just created a leave your feedback link on top there. I just want to make sure you guys have time to ask questions about the topic or make any comments. I'm open for conversation now. If you don't have any questions, I would really strongly suggest you to go to the button here, Whitetail Stories, to share your ideas and to give me some feedback on the session. It's the first time in my life I present a webinar, and yes, I can share the things with you guys. And a good thing about my slides is that they have the activities that I have shared with you guys. There is a lot of explanations in the bottom of the PowerPoints, so I will share extra ideas there. Okay, For those who want a copy of my presentation, I will put it in Google Drive and I will email the link to those who email me. If you guys have any questions, I'll just leave my contact information. You can email me at this website, at this email address here, and I will give you the Google Drive link or the downloads link for this, okay? For all of you who have participated, thank you very much. It was a very special night for me. Thanks for listening, and I'm open for questions. Thank you. So my email here. That's my email. That's my Facebook page. And just a second. Yes, thank you, Adri. Thank you, Renata. Let me see the questions. What do you consider deficient to English proficiency? Well, I think English proficiency is pretty much about being able to get your message through and being able to tell your story and communicate. Okay, that's my views. So the last question, if I have a theoretical material about this topic, you need it for a monography. Yes, there are plenty of books that can help you. There is one that I actually got ideas from right here. It's from Richmond. It's called Teaching Very Young Children, Preschool and Early Primary. There's lots of hands-on activities here that can help you guys out, which I think is cool. There is another one. Sorry, my stuff is falling down. See, I'm not that organized. Um, I think I have it here. Yes, I do. This one also has practical ideas on storytelling and in things in general. It's by Richmond as well. It's called Primary Methodology Handbook. Lots of practical ideas for your classroom. I can, when you get the slides, all the information about the resources I found and the sources of stuff that I used will be there. And there is another one, the final one that I have, that is no longer published. It's by our competitor Oxford, but it's a good book. It's called Teaching with Bear, and it's pretty much about storytelling with puppets, which is really cool. I think you guys can find it online. It's called Teaching with Bear. It does have a lot of cool activities that you guys can take a look at. Okay. So, again, thank you very much for tonight. I'm gonna shut it down now, but you can get in touch with me with those things. That's my WhatsApp, that's my email, that's my Facebook page, and you can leave feedback on the link that I have sent. All right. The webinar has been recorded, so Disal will probably let you guys watch it later on if you guys want to revisit some of the ideas. And thank you very much. All right. Bye.